So I'm Jay. I'm a seven-figure seller, also founder of Gorilla ROI, which is an Amazon data connector to load Amazon directly to Google Sheets.
Hi, I'm Andre. I'm a seven-figure seller and the founder of Sellermetrics.
So the first topic that we have is image split testing. And Andre, you're the expert on this, so let's have you answer this.
So split testing is pretty easy. It's just a few rules you have to remember and to understand. And the main factor is you have to avoid the biases in your tests. And you have to establish correct benchmarks when you start the test and go from there.
So when you say biases, do you mean like I've done split testing? Do you mean where I may think that something is going to automatically be a winner, so I don't bother testing that? Is that what you mean by biases?
Probably, but there's biases that come from you and there's biases that can come from the system, right? So biases from you is what you assume that should be, right? And you don't test it correctly. But the biases from the system is, for example, there's a lot of tools that run the split testing surveys in a sterile environment, right? So basically, when you want to split test your main image, you have to run in the specific size that's on Amazon, right? The thumbnails on Amazon are pretty small. And when you split test them, two side-by-side images, big, right? A and B, and it's a white rectangle behind that. There's no much value in that because the way you see it is not the way they will be displayed on Amazon, right? Because they're being displayed in a very small size and you're testing something big and it's just two products. And when we go on Amazon, usually you're enveloped by 20, 30 products in the search results. So that's one bias. It's because people don't get the right context. So
right, okay. So you mean like, you know how when we used to do split testing, everything was done in a vacuum, like on a nice white background where that's the sole focus. So you're saying it has to be in a proper environment, like a real world situation, right?
Actually, that is the reason why we created the simulators in Sellermetrics, because I've discovered by mistake, actually, that the size impacts the results of the votes, right? Our system was down, so I had to go and use a spreadsheet, a Google form, right? And target the same audiences we used. But in Google form, you have a very small thumbnail in the image is being displayed in a very small form, right? So when I compared the results, I did them like 5 times and everything that was done in Sellermetrics, it was one result. And when we went on the Google form, it was a completely different result, right? So that started the thinking process, and that was basically a year and something ago. It's a work in progress. So we came to the realization that we have to deliver the right medium, not only to you as a user, but also the voters that vote, because they are actually impacting the results of what you're seeing, right?
Right. So then what is, like, let's go through the process of how somebody should be split tested then. We want to get the viewers to take away a page full of notes or page full of action items, right? So what is that process that people should at least start thinking about or looking into if they're not doing something properly?
Yeah. So first you have to decide, what are you going to split test? Are you going to split test your main image or the image stack and the A+? If you go with the main image, you're actually optimizing not for conversion, but for CTR, for click-through rate, right? And that's what we talked about, the size. Now, if we're talking about conversion and optimizing your sale funnel, that's your image stack. Because the listing on Amazon, it's a visual sale funnel. And I'm saying visual because the copy is not so relevant anymore on Amazon. It's because the huge amount of competition and Amazon constantly split testing themselves, removing bullet points, reducing the footprint of the bullet points on the image display, right? So they become smaller and smaller, and sometimes they're being pushed down, and the image becomes bigger and bigger. And if you notice, I don't know the reason how to do this, but I've noticed that a lot of images, a lot of products on Amazon sometimes have a bigger image, main image, the footprint of the image than other ones, right? And you can't, we've tried vertical ones, we've tried square ones. It's just decided by Amazon. Maybe there's something that triggers it. I haven't discovered it, but that's affecting the way, because if an image is 500 pixel or if it's 800 pixel, it's a huge difference in how you're perceiving that product. So going back to the visual funnel, like, because we have basically Amazon trying to push the visual part of the images of the listing more, we have to optimize for that, right? So
right.
That's basically the thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like obviously you have to have an objective, go through the image stack, see how it looks, look at the competitors, look at, say, like what the main image size is, and then focus on the big important stuff, going down to the secondary, right? So that's the sequence that you would do the images, like the main and then the secondary images. Do you think we're going to get to this a little bit later, but do you think the ordering of the images is important?
Yes, it's pretty important. It's crucial, I would say. But when let's say, so are we talking about the image stack or are we talking about the main image?
Okay, let's keep going on with the main image.
The main image, we have to optimize for the CTR because you need the click. You don't want to sell with the main image, right?
Like, what are some things like optimizing for CTR? Like, what are some specifics of that you've seen that works?
You can't really get something that works for everyone. It's usually different things for different categories and products, right? We've noticed that colors is a very big influencer in that space. The shape, the size, I don't know, like you have more contrast to the image and stuff like that, right? So we're trying to differentiate as much as possible from the crowd that's happening on Amazon, right? So when everybody's zigging, you have to zag, and sometimes it's changing the color, making it more juicy. What we're trying to do is always making your image, your thumbnail, the most appealing thing, right? So the user is like constantly drawn to that, and simplifying actually is what tends to work the best, right? So we're reducing the clutter usually because everyone tries to add things and add, and we're actually trying to make it as simple as interesting, because the more simple the image is, the more sophisticated it has to be, because when you remove the noise, you're actually seeing the main thing. So make it simple, make it understandable and easy digestible. You have just a few seconds, right? They're scrolling with their eyes, so they see it as, okay, this is interesting. They didn't decide it to buy, they just decided that they want to give you a try and look at your product. And when they get inside, you got them. So now you have to convert them. And now we are on the image stack. And here's what you were saying with the image order. It's crucial, I would say, because what you're displaying in the second image, it's basically, that's where you're selling. You're selling in the second image. They're fresh. They just landed on your product. And here's where you have to convince them and remove all the questions in their heads, right? Because when you want to buy whatever, let's say this, that's a candle, right? So you have some questions, some expectations. And if you answer and you remove them right away in your second image, right? You're addressing the most important question in your secondary image, in your second image, right? Then you clarify the thing and it's clear for them. So make it clear, make it understandable. And is like, for example, you explain the smell in the case of this, you explain the shape, you explain that it doesn't have toxic stuff, right? Because it's soy maybe or something like that, right? So that's what's going to convince them right away. So if you push one of your most important images down the drain, like in the 6th place, you lost so much space, because maybe they will bounce on your third image and just see an ad and go out. And they didn't decide that, okay, I'm going to buy it, right? Like you have kids and the kid is crying, you just go, that's done. Or you saw an ad and you go to somebody else and that guy is going to convert better than you. It's all about conversion in the end on Amazon.
Right. Yeah, because it's all about the sales, because the only reason that you can get to 7 figures and above is either you've got a not so much a better product, because there's so many people with the same product. It's about how do you market it? How do you get people to click on your listing and then convert it, right? So, I mean, I like what you said about the simplifying, because that's something that we are doing at the moment, where we do this every quarterly where we go through our existing images, go through what can we do, because we sell more premium price points compared to competition. So in order for us to justify that price point, it's like, oh crap, I got to get rid of all of my clutter that makes it look cheap, change the color schemes around so that we can make it look more premium, like a luxury brand type thing. So that also, I mean, you've sort of answered what I was going to ask you about, like what are the things to avoid? So when you're split testing, you obviously want to avoid the clutter, the mess. Don't be like, every other Chinese seller trying to cram like 10 different items into like a tiny thumbnail, right? Just go for that really simple, less is more concept.
Yeah, you have to talk their language. That's why it's important to know who's your ideal avatar that's going into branding. But usually it's like you're talking to a 30 or you're talking to a 60 years old person, right? So that's already one thing. You have to have a proper grammar, so you look like you're from the same tribe. That's what you want to look like, right?
Yeah. So where the customer actually feels like, hey, these guys get me, this product really understands who I am. Yep, this is for me, and then they convert.
Yeah, but clutter is a huge problem. And what I've noticed, a lot of Amazon sellers forget about that thing, right? So you have the logo on every image. Like, why do you need that logo on every image? You have it on your product. You have it on your packaging. And then you add it.
I'm guilty of that, because like I had my logos on so many of my images, for the whole purpose of like brand recognition. But the reality is, unless you're national, even there are so many like 7, 8, 9-figure brands that we've never heard of, right? So the reality is, as a 6, 7-figure business on Amazon, mostly predominantly, our brand identity is pretty much non-existent. And so my philosophy was, let's shove my logo everywhere. But it actually had a negative effect where it's just, distraction from the product, distraction from people wanting to buy the product.
Yeah. They're coming on Amazon for the value. So you have to prove yourself to be a household brand, a household name, right? So when you have your logo in each corner, that's distracting the visitor from actually reading that call to action that you have on each image, right? And that's another thing that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But like you're distracting him. So instead of him focusing on your product, then looking at your main call to action, the sub call to action, like the second one, you're actually showing a logo. And that's distracting, right? So it's very important.
Okay. Yeah, so that's good. So like as an example, like I've seen your type of images, right? And don't have to give us exact numbers, but on a ballpark, like what type of improvements have you seen?
So the difference is pretty big, right? It can jump from 10 to go at this 50% increase in conversion rate. And it depends how much you work on that. And understanding the right approach, doing the right tests, improving. And here's the thing that I wanted to say. You can do the right tests, all of them. Do the right changes, but you didn't hire the right creative. You're missing a point. And that's going to affect how your product is going to be perceived. We as Amazon sellers, we are data people. We're pretty good at numbers and understanding what has to be in that image. We're very good with that. So all we have to do is find the right person to translate our data and put it nicely on the images. Then that's going to convert better.